Another midfielder who I wanted to touch on because there's been some discussion about him in the forum, and I think it's probably a really interesting player to touch on at this moment in time in the season is Mateus Fernandes at West Ham. One of the users in the forum simply put, he's West Ham's best current player, and he suggests a market value increase. His market values currently stand at 35 million euros. Ben, we did upgrade him by 3 million euros in the last Premier League market value update, but I think Fernandes is an interesting one because, as you just said, he is West Ham's best player right now, but he's kind of characterising this impressive kind of turn in form for West Ham in the second half of the season. But he's also a player who joined for a huge fee at the start of the season. So he kind of had that hanging over him. But it feels like he's maybe finally settled into that West Ham team, and West Ham are beginning to benefit from it.
For sure. And again, that was probably one of the most difficult players to assess in the last update. And maybe one we did make a slight mistake with. We could have perhaps gone a little bit higher to potentially to 40 million. And I don't particularly disagree that he's been West Ham's best player. I think Crysencio Summerville has also been excellent before he got injured. But those two are the ones that are carrying that charge at the moment to try and get West Ham out of that. However, they are still in the relegation zone at the moment and are probably the favourites out of that battle to go down. So it was a difficult one in that last update, bearing in mind he'd already gone up 20 million over the season. So we chose to only go 3 million up further in the March update. But there's no doubt that he's been excelling because of the exit of Lucas Paqueta. That left a huge hole in that team in terms of creativity in midfield, and he has stepped up and taken that role. And I think Paqueta's attitude was perhaps having a bit of a bad effect on the squad in terms of, for a while, we've known he's not particularly happy there. So without him, Fernandes has stood up and sort of made that role his own in the team. And he has been fantastic. And as I say, if they stay up, it's likely to be through him. And if they go down, there's likely to be a lot of interest from other Premier League clubs to try and perhaps get him on a cheaper fee with West Ham being relegated. So I think, yeah, he's definitely someone we'll have in mind for another upgrade in June, and someone who was perhaps a little bit unlucky to not go up further in the last update.
Yeah, he's another one who I think could benefit from a good World Cup. He got a call up to the Portuguese national team and was on the bench against Mexico, didn't come on. But if you actually look at the midfielders they've obviously got some outstanding midfielders. Vitinha's the most obvious one. But, in that game, it was Ruben Neves, who's obviously Al Hilal, whose kind of stock has been into Stumble, and Samu Costa, who's playing for Mallorca. So you would think if Fernandes can continue performing in the Premier League, it's something that Roberto Martinez is obviously aware of, we might see his market value increase there as well. It's also just another example, and we do kind of make this point as often as we can. We don't line up transfer fees one for one with the market values, do we? They obviously play an influence in it, but Fernandes kind of had to prove not that he was a 44 million euro player at West Ham, but that he was a West Ham player first and foremost, didn't he, this season? And I guess we could argue that he's now beginning to show that.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, the further towards the end of the transfer window we often see clubs particularly clubs who've had a bad start to the season, panic buying to an extent and overpaying for players. And with Fernandes, he didn't start great at West Ham, and it looked like he might have been one of those. So I think his market value was 15 million at the time when he went for 44 million, which was obviously too low. I think we amended that straight away to 32 million in the next update because he didn't start great at West Ham. And since then, he has improved, as I said, so he's likely to go up further. With the World Cup, I just can't see him getting anywhere near the lineup through no fault of his own, just through the sheer number. Portugal's midfield is so scary when you've got Vitinha, João Neves, Bernardo Silva. Martinez obviously likes the experience of Ruben Neves. I think Fernandes might go and he might get some minutes, which accordingly could still affect his market value, but I think he's unlikely to be able to get in that starting midfield just yet because of the sheer quality they have. But he's still only 21 years old as well, so definitely one for the future for both Portugal and for potentially a top Premier League club.